The phrase follow your passion is often taken wildly out of context, and especially it's taken out of context in relation to how people refer to me. And I usually feel that people who criticize the idea of doing things you're passionate about, they usually come back with, well, not everybody can do that, Roberto. Or it's like some people, don't get to do that, Roberto. Or are you? Or, and all these things. And when I think about it and the idea and the rhetoric that, well, not everybody can do that, I think that that is part of the problem in terms of the lie that people have been told, because I want you to really consider something here. There's a very good chance, if you're watching this, that you're a human being, which means that at some point you're probably going to die. So you might as well live. Now that's a very blunt way to look at it, but I really want that to sink in for you, because I think that one of the biggest problems in the culture of work, in the culture of our society, is that people are doing things they hate and they are making excuses for that instead of just understanding and owning their own truth. And I think that people are being stripped of their individuality, because the people are opting out of acting with intention and living a life of purpose and meaning. And I think that considering the amount of time that you devote to your job every day, that gets taken away from your friends, your family, your loved ones, your parents, from you as an individual, considering the trade-off every single day, why is that being given in the service of somebody else's purpose? And why is that given in the service of something that you dislike or feel a lack of contentment around, instead of something that provides you with a sense of pride, a sense of meaning, a sense of ownership, and speaks to your ideals or your values and makes you feel animated and alive? Because if you're not living with that intention, if you're not living that way, if you're not doing things that you at least enjoy, or that make you feel like you're contributing value and finding meaning and purpose, then what are you doing? Because that's not living, okay? I'm just gonna be very real with you. It's not living if you're doing that. And I know. Now, for a lot of you, some of you may not have any context. You have no idea who I am. Well, my name is Roberto Blake. I'm a creative entrepreneur. I built a 6-figure coaching business, but you know what? Before all of that, and before I became a public speaker, or before I became known on YouTube, you know who I was? I was a broke college kid. I didn't have, back in the day when, like in 2002, when $5 was good gas money, remember that? The quote unquote good old days? I didn't have the $5 to give my friends to help me get to my classes. I couldn't get to my classes on time because a lot of times I was coming off a shift because I was working my way through college. I went to community college and I paid cash. I refused to start my life in student loan debt, and I was paying cash and working there. And I was taking crap for being tired or being late when I was working and paying to be there. I'm a paying customer and I'm taking crap for being late for the thing I paid to be there for. And I went through all of those things. When I was in middle school, I was picked on because I was in the free lunch line. Okay, so you don't think I understand what it is to live through pain and through suffering and through hardship? I do. I overcame suicide and depression. I went through all of those things to become successful, and you don't do that by settling. You have to do things that build your confidence. You have to do things that live with your truth and your sense of integrity. You have to stand up for your individuality to do that, because the world is very cruel sometimes. I don't think it's all sunshine and rainbows. I'm a very optimistic person, but I know the reality. And the reality that a lot of people don't address is the simple fact that the world and the systems of the world often strip people and rob them of their individuality. And then you're not serving your purpose. You're not living your calling. You're serving somebody else's purpose. You're being leveraged. And so in order to live life on your own terms, which is what I think most people want, you have to find the confidence and the courage to actually live your truth and to develop some sense of self-awareness, because somewhere deep down in your intuition, you know what you want. You know what you want. The problem is that's hard. You know what you want, but you may not yet have the confidence and courage to stand up for it, to fight for it, to take it, to work for it, because it's easier to settle. It's easier to do things that other people have convinced you or tricked you into thinking are practical instead of doing the extra work to take what's in your gut, what's in your soul, what your purpose is, and to make your purpose practical. And you do that by understanding and recognizing that the things that you're passionate about aren't just flights of fancy and whimsy. The things that you are passionate about are a sign, they're a cue from your inner voice as to what will make you truly happy and fulfilled. And the thing is, working to be happy and fulfilled is very important. Like, you're not going to care that you died with like zero debt. You might. I like not having credit card debt and student loan debt, but like in the grand scheme of things, I don't think on their deathbed, people are like, oh, I'm dying in debt. I really regret that. I think they're regretting all the chances they didn't take, all the risks they didn't take, all the times they didn't bet on themselves, all the times they weren't kind because they were in pain and they lashed out, all the times they said things that they regret, all the times they passed on what they really wanted. That's what, if you talk to people, or if you have been like me, unfortunate enough to have lost people in your life, when they tell you about their regrets, they're not regretting that, they don't have zero debt. What they are regretting, which is still like a thing. I don't like debt, but I think what you have to understand is that to live your life where you have the least regrets possible, you need to minimize regret. And the way that you minimize regret is by living with intention and living with a real desire to fulfill your purpose. And you may not know what your purpose is yet because you're not listening to yourself. You are distracted by all the things that are causing you pain. And the things that are causing you pain are because you're listening to the lies of the everybody does this, or oh, everybody does that. And those things are a lie. Those things are a trap. Those things are a trick, because you know what the world has produced at scale through common wisdom? Mediocrity and misery. You have people, we have at least here in the United States, we have what you might call a mental health epidemic. We have an opioid crisis. So why do people abuse themselves and why do people suffer in this way? Well, it's because they're unhappy. At the core, it's because they're unhappy. People abuse substances as an escape. If you've never had a friend that has been, addicted to a substance, it's very painful to watch, but the root cause of it is some pain that they're enduring and subjected to in their life on a regular basis. And so to escape that pain, they abuse themselves. And it's very unfortunate and it's very sad to watch. If you've never been through that, then good for you if you have never seen somebody go through that. Now, the thing about it is, we escape our lives through our entertainments and through these distractions and things like that, because we're not living a life that we don't want to escape. When people look at successful people or entrepreneurs or people who quote unquote hustle, or content creators or influencers, they look at them and they're looking for them to be fake because they have what might be called an enviable life. And people are comparing themselves to that and saying, well, that can't be real, or that can't be all there is. And part of it is that it is a highlight reel. It is a highlight reel because you're not seeing the hard work, the sweat, the grind, the sad times, or everything they went through to get up to that. I don't think that's any different than looking at a concert, violinist, or a concert pianist, or a pro athlete, an Olympic athlete, and not realizing that the performance is the outcome. And all of the blood, sweat, and tears and hard work that went into that, you weren't there for, and you didn't get the behind the scenes of that. You just got the highlight reel. It's the same thing in that regard. So I don't think that those things are as fake as people want to believe. I think some of it is. But what I really think, the reason people are looking for that to be fake is they need a way to justify to themselves settling. They need a way to justify to themselves why they don't have that. And the easy thing is to tell yourself that those people are lucky, or those people cheated, or that thing is fake. If you had to accept the possibility that you could have your own version of that, but you just haven't worked hard enough for it yet, that would mean you have to take responsibility for the life that you have. And that's very hard and difficult to do because it's easier to just blame everyone else. But Roberto, you just said that like society and the world kind of tricks you and robs you of your individuality. Yes, if you don't fight back, or if you don't educate yourself, or if you don't say no and you let yourself be leveraged, then yes, you have to take the reins. Like, you know what? I take responsibility for the fact that people walked all over me because I allowed it. People walked all over me because I allowed it. Some of the bullying stopped when I swung back. It wasn't all of it, but it got better. and that isn't always the right thing. And there's a way to fight back sometimes. So I want you to really consider, how can you live your life more intentionally? That's the real point. When people are talking about, well, pursue your passion or what are you passionate about, they're asking you to be honest with yourself about what would make you happier, what would make you fulfilled, because it's easier to work very hard. It's easier to work hard and to find meaning in whatever suffering you're enduring if you appreciate the outcome. If you are getting what you want out of it, you can say, man, that was hard, that was rough, but in the end, it was worth it. It was worth it. But here's the thing, the far majority of you watching this, you're working hard, and the results, if you're honest with yourself, you don't really believe that it was worth it. And that's why you don't really want to work that much harder, because you don't believe that what you get out of it is worthwhile enough to justify all the effort. And that's the real problem, is when you don't believe that the outcome justifies the effort, working hard, being disciplined, being focused, being relentless feels like too much to ask. And that's why the word hustle feels like abuse. That's why saying you don't work hard enough feels like abuse, because you already work so hard to get what in your mind is so little. But that has to do with a lack of alignment, because if you enjoyed the process of the work that you are doing, AKA if you were doing something that you're passionate about, and maybe it's not your top tier passion, because maybe your top tier passion isn't practical enough to actually manifest what would be worth that effort for you. Maybe that process doesn't, produce that net outcome. But what about your number 2 or your number 3 or your number 4, or at a bare minimum, could you find work that you don't hate and don't despise, that produces an outcome that's reasonable and is acceptable to you as an individual? To you as an individual, not what society says is good enough, not what your parents think is good enough, not what the culture says is good enough, what you as a person actually want, okay? That is what I would love to know is happening for you in life, because ultimately, I was very fortunate in the fact that my parents didn't tell me who to be. My parents didn't tell me who to be, and they didn't tell me what to think or what to believe in. They presented me with a lot of options. They worked very hard. They gave what they could to invest in me, and they allowed me the bandwidth and the time and the headspace to figure out who I was and what I want. They didn't tell me who to be. They just encouraged me to give my all to whatever it is I'm doing, to be disciplined, and to try to do my best. If I couldn't be the best, I needed to at least do my best. I needed to give it my maximum effort. And I can fully appreciate that that's not everybody's situation. I didn't get born to a rich or a wealthy family, but I'm very grateful for the parents that I did have. And not everybody is so fortunate as to have somebody in their corner like that. And my parents didn't always know how to help me. They just did the best that they could. And I think that most of you watching this probably can sympathize with that. I think a lot of you can relate to that. Maybe you didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a mentor early in life, or even in my my 20s or anything like that. I've only ever had mentors from afar, and now instead of mentors, I'm very fortunate and very blessed to have wonderful people in my life as my peers, as my colleagues, as my contemporaries, as my friends. But that wasn't always the case. And I was a very lonely kid for a very long time. And when you're isolated like that and you're living in your own head and you're being bullied and you're being abused and you're going to school and you're taking crap there, it feels very hard and difficult to get through life. And that was my experience. And maybe you guys are going through that. I think that you owe it to yourself to find a way to rationalize and justify the pain that you've gone through by at least getting what you want out of life. If you're going to go through all of this hardship and you're going to endure this pain that the world has for you, then you might as well extract your price, and you might as well make that price as high as possible. And that price should be your happiness. That price should be, if you're gonna go through all of these things, you should at least be happy. You should at least find some sense of satisfaction, some sense of self-worth, some sense of pride, some sense of purpose. And I think that the reason that is so hard is because everybody tells you, well, you can't do that, or I'm not happy, or I'm not miserable, but I have what I need, I'm content, I've got a good salary, I've got this, I've got that. Like, you have a lot of these people that, frankly, I'm gonna say it, like, you have a lot of these curmudgeons, you have a lot of these people who settled, and they're crabs in a barrel who wanna keep you there when there's a whole world that has a lot more to offer you than throwing you into a boiling pot with the rest of the, like, freaking losers. I mean, that's just the truth. That's harsh, I get it, I know, but I don't want you to get this twisted. I don't want you to take this out of context. I want you to use this as fuel to say that I deserve better, I want better, and I'm going to put myself in a position to work for exactly what I want and nothing less. Because you're doing all this work to not even get what you want, And I think that you have to develop that sense of awareness. You have to listen to your intuition. You have to listen to what's in your gut, what's in your soul, and you have to reclaim your individuality. You have to stop following, and you have to be led by your purpose. When we say follow your passion, I think it's incomplete advice. I think the real thing that we could say that's not as catchy is to be led by your purpose. If you're led by your purpose, you're going to do things that you take satisfaction in, that you take pride in, that give you net happiness. You're not going to keep opting into misery and suffering to get very little in return, because that's just stupid, right? I mean, that makes no sense, and yet everybody does it. Stop following everybody. Why would you be the 99%, and why would you not choose to be the 10% or the 1%? And that is a choice. That is a choice. At least if you were fortunate enough to be born in the United States or in any country that has anything resembling freedom, and you're watching this, and the thing is, you probably would have to be watching this, then it's a choice. It's a choice that you can make for yourself. You can choose a different standard. You can choose to give people a standard for how they treat you, how they interact with you. You can choose to put yourself in a position to have leverage. If you're not worth the amount of money that you want right now, there is somebody who is worth the amount of money that you want to make. And the goal for you, in my mind, would be to raise your standard and to close the gap between you and them. Not for the sake of comparison, but to understand what leverage they have, what personal power they have, what skills they have to command that outcome that you currently don't. You can always work on yourself. You can always improve yourself. You can always better yourself. And in bettering yourself, you will have the right to claim better within your life. I genuinely believe that, and that has been, I think, the fundamental mindset shift in my life that changed everything for me. So again, this video is something different. This is not what I typically do on the channel, but I'm here at a conference in Boston. I just had some amazing conversations last night over dinner. And I really just felt compelled to make this video for you and to put into context why I think people are not following their quote unquote passion, why they're not living a life of meaning and purpose, and why people are settling for their suffering instead of manifesting it into something that's worthwhile and that can make them not only endure their pain throughout life, but to overcome it and to thrive and to genuinely be able to contribute to the world and to live a life of meaning. And whatever is meaningful for you, you don't have to rationalize it or justify it to me. You just have to make it worth your while and be able to live life on your own terms. And that's the core of what I'm trying to accomplish with the videos that I make on this channel, with the podcast that I do, with the articles I write, with the interviews that I do. I'm trying to put you in a position to get skills so you can better yourself, to shift your mindset to one of optimism and positivity so that you can see the abundance of opportunities that are right in front of you instead of settling and being blinded by your pain and cheated out of your destiny. Because I think that is very sinister, and I think that for many people in the world, it's in their best interest for you to not get what your due is. And I think you understand that. I think you realize that. I think you've experienced that before. So like I said, this video is something very different. This is just some real talk. And I hope that you found it helpful. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments. What has been holding you back? What has been holding you back? Or what's one of those lies that society or the parents or the culture or whatever, whoever, like what's one of those things that you feel was a limiting belief and mindset of scarcity that you think has held you back in life? And what are you gonna do about it? I would love to know in the comment section of this video. Like this video if you like it, subscribe for the other content. We got a lot of educational stuff here on the channel that can help you better your career, build a business, or even build up your confidence. As always, you guys, thanks so very much for taking the time to watch this. And remember, go out there and create something awesome today. Hopefully, the life that you really deserve to live. Take care.